Parker, did you enjoy the parade?
Mr. Lockhart, as a matter of fact, we chose to avoid it. I fail to see why we should be so enamoured of those swaggering brutes, just because they polished off a lot of Frenchmen.
He stumbled upon Arthur and Georgiana, and I immediately recognized the way that Georgiana reacted to seeing Lockhart walking by them, and it looked like she had some interest in him.
I quite agree. I happen to be enormously fond of the French myself, although I know it is blasphemy to say so.
Oh, may I introduce my dear friend, Miss Lamb?
Miss Lamb, I must confess I noticed you in the assembly rooms yesterday.
I think it was a red flag. Mr. Lockhart should not have told Georgiana that he recognized her the other day in the assembly room. That takes a lot of courage to say it out loud. It sounded like a little bit like a stalker in a way, if that makes sense.
How observant. I wonder what it was that caught your attention.
It was your expression. Haughty yet inscrutable.
Interesting, because I thought you looked arrogant and affected.
Oh, I am both of those things. I fear I am an open book.
What a choice of words he described her. What a really bad first impression. And Miss Lamb said it back in the same manner, using her own 2 words. I'm pretty sure he is failing her first impression test.
Yet with you, I find your true character harder to ascertain. But perhaps that's by design.
Perhaps it is simply that I do not wish to be known by you. Come, Arthur.
A pleasure, sir. A bientôt.
She is hard to open up. I mean, she doesn't trust people easily. So, Mr. Lockhart will come to learn that if he ever get to be her friend. But yeah, she's definitely annoyed by his lack of respect. He just come off really bold and arrogant at the same time. This is not a way to introduce yourself and automatically describing the other person, what they act like, how they behave. It reminded me of Charlotte telling Sydney what she thought of Sydney and his family in the first episode of season 1. Poor judgment by Mr. Lockhart, but in general, overall, you shouldn't be judging and telling that person what you think of them without even knowing them, Don't judge someone by the cover, right? So, this is a bad start for Mr. Lockhart in trying to get Georgiana attention.
Herrick Park. Is that where you live? I do not live here. I'm a prisoner. To date, I've been held against my will for 16 months and 11 days.
So both of their moms are dead. So do both of them have their father still alive? But by the way that Augusta mentioned that she's been a prisoner, it tells us that how long she's been orphaned, if that even the right word, how long it's been since her parents died, 16 months, so that's a little bit over a year ago. So the next question would be, who is she living with? Is she living with her uncle?
If you hate it so much, you can leave.
Had I anywhere else to go? You horrible child, do you not think I would?
Oh, stop, please. There's no need to argue.
That is not a good way to talk to your younger cousin. Augusta really had major attitude at the moment. She doesn't have a great relationship with Leonora. Leonora seemed to be in her own world, in the army world, something to keep her occupied. Leonora seemed to not have any other sibling, so all she got is probably her dad and Augusta attitude right now is not helping. Charlotte trying to keep them civil.
May I help you, Miss?
Miss Hayward, I just returned Miss Colburn and Miss Markham from the parade, but Miss Colburn's hurt her leg and it really does need seeing to.
The maid of the house seemed surprised to have a visitor coming from Charlotte.
Mr. Colburn told him expressly not to go near those soldiers. He will not be best pleased. which is why we're looking for a governess. Thank you, Miss Hayward.
2 little clues. The children's father has something against the army. Those kids will be in trouble. Thanks to Charlotte telling the maid that they went to the parade. Second of all, they're looking for a governess, so that's gonna play a role later in this episode. This is the first time that Charlotte visits this house. She doesn't know who lives in this house except for the 2 kids. This house is like on a big private land, very private, like excluded from the rest of the town of Sanditon.
Mary tells me those girls belong to Alexander Colborne. Small wonder they were so objectionable.
Tom!
Well, you cannot deny that the man is a miser and a recluse and owns not one quality I could call admirable.
I looked up those 2 words because I never heard of it until now. A miser is someone who spent little money on anything, and the other one is a recluse, which means the type of person that socialize very little, doesn't go out of the house too often, avoid other people. So it makes sense, especially that property being on the private big land, far away from everyone else in town. Tom's perspective of this mystery man that we are yet to see, Mr. Heybourne, seemed interesting, and I think Charlotte is very intrigued by the tales that the Parker family is telling her right now about this certain family.
What has this Mr. Colburn done to cause you such offence?
Tried at every turn to obstruct my improvements, Charlotte. If he had his way, Sanditon would still be a fishing village.
Well, never heard you mention him before.
That's because I prefer not to think of him.
Tom Parker might have a meeting in the past or a discussion with Mr. Heybourne about building Sanditon. It seemed the direction that Sanditon is going is like becoming a little bit more like a city, but Mr. Heybourne never supported the idea by what Tom said. Mr. Heybourne likes the nature, laid-back type of style, the town life, which is the opposite of what Tom wants for the future of Sanditon.
And in truth, he is rarely seen outside of his estate.
After the death of his wife some years ago, Mr. Colborne largely withdrew from society.
Yeah, they say the precise circumstances of her death have never been explained.
Oh, Arthur!
Also, another new information about Mr. Heybourne, his wife died. These information that the Parker family is sharing with Charlotte will help her later in this episode.
The child that fell.
Quite unharmed, I assure you, sir. Besides a small cut to her leg.
I'm heartily relieved to hear it, Miss Hayward. That she was spared a far graver outcome is thanks only to your quick thinking and courage.
Those are only 2 of my sister's many fine qualities, Colonel.
Allison is definitely and officially Team Lennox for Charlotte's future potential husband. What a clever move she did, putting her sister in the spotlight of what Charlotte did in rescuing that little girl.
And would you join us for tea, Colonel?
I'd be honoured.
I'll get another cup.
I'll go.
What a spectacle your company gave us, Colonel.
Maybe just me over-analyzing, but when Charlotte got up from her seat to get another cup for Colonel Lennox, I thought it was a way for her to get some fresh air after what Allison said about her. That's my random guess. But this is an interesting opportunity for Colonel Lennox to get to know the family more, and particularly to get to know Charlotte a little bit more, and vice versa.
Your first impressions of Sanditon, Colonel?
I was struck at once by its natural beauty.
It is fair to say that all who set foot in Sanditon fall in love on the spot.
Tom is very proud of his presentation of Sanditon. Interesting though, Lennox literally looked at Charlotte while he was answering the question. But when he said about the charm of Sanditon, that's including the beauty of Charlotte. So he was flattered by Charlotte's beauty when she visited the army camp with Allison and Georgiana earlier in this episode.
Was that your experience, Miss Hayward?
I'm exceedingly fond of Sanditon and the people in it.
That's kind of like a little bit of a challenge because of the memories that she had from season 1, especially with Sydney. But she answered the question politely and in general, straight to the point.
Yet I shouldn't be surprised if by summer's end you decide to build a permanent barracks here.
Oh, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Tom.
The Colonel has barely arrived.
Quite so, Mrs. Parker. And in truth, our company doesn't tend to stay in any one place for long.
If anyone marries Colonel Lennox, it will be a challenge because his lifestyle is not consistent, it's not steady. He moves around a lot, going in and out. That possibility of being away from family a lot of time during the year. I don't think Charlotte would be interested in that lifestyle, but he was honest about how the army doesn't stay in one place too long. So we'll see if this is a short visit of these army men.
I must say, Colonel, it does sound a rather lonely sort of life. Do you never long to put down roots of a more permanent sort?
I cannot deny the thought has crossed my mind. But to be an army officer's wife requires a particular kind of forbearance.
Yes, I imagine it would require quick thinking and courage.
Allison is like interrogating him on purpose on behalf of her sister Charlotte. I don't think Charlotte liked this idea, but at the same time, it's kind of like a good knowledge for Charlotte, just to like feel it out. But Lennox did thought of settling down someday, but we'll see if he's ready for that or if he's very focused on his job at the moment.
Knowing your husband might at any moment be shipped across the ocean, perhaps never to return.
That seems a price worth paying, given the life of an officer's wife is surely a great deal more exciting than that of, say, a farmer's wife.
Allison definitely has high standards in looking for a husband, so I guess she preferred to be a sailor wife than a farmer wife, and that means, you know, more money, I guess. But Lennox made a good point. He was very honest in this conversation, like, hey, if anyone marries me, like, you know, I'll be away and I might die in my job. And I think when he said that, you know, the possibility of him not coming back to his family, like if that ever happened in the future, you know, it can happen. And I think when he said the word leave, never return, I think there's something inside of Charlotte, and I think that's one of the reasons why she decided to just leave the conversation and walk off.
Would you not agree, Charlotte? That is beside the point, given I have no intention of becoming either.
I shall take that as a sign of sound judgment.
Excuse me a moment.
My prediction that she was thinking of Sydney, of how they got separated, they broke up, and he went to Antigua, he never came home, he died. So I think that memory of Sydney played a role in association with what Lennox said about being a sailor wife. Your husband might not return home. And Charlotte, with her answer to Allison's question, like she's not interested in any of that, like she's not interested in a marriage at all, she's not interested in love at the moment, or maybe for the rest of her life. This is a very touchy topic for her to talk about, and it showed that she's still processing her grief over Sydney, and I think she had the right to leave the room. She was getting a little bit annoyed and emotional, so she had to leave. Of course, Allison, she had no idea what Charlotte's thinking and feeling in that scene, and Lennox like calculating Charlotte, and he made that point, like, you know, is that coming from experience? Like, it sounds like a sound judgment, like you already made your decision to not be anyone's wife, regardless of the husband occupation. He's trying to figure her out.
Never dreamt the Colonel would bring us here, of all places.
A remarkable coincidence.
I would never presume to ask your forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I'm hoping that I may yet prove I've seen the error of my ways, that I'm not the Edward Denham that I once was.
When you watch these episodes again, you tend to like learn something new for the first time, or something that you forgot that it was said or happened, but keep in mind what Edward just said to Lady Denham, how he kind of like blaming on Colonel Lennox for landing in Sanditon for some time.
I find that extremely difficult to believe. While you are here, you will keep your distance. Especially from Esther. There's enough to worry about.
You have my word.
Let's see if he keeps his word. He's not that type of guy that keeps his promises. But I wish that Lady Denham didn't say that about Esther, how she already had a lot on her mind. So it kind of like gave a clue to Edward, like, oh, is something going on, a trouble in marriage. Like, it's none of his business, but I wish Lady Denham didn't say that. Of course, as an aunt, you know, you cannot hate your nephew forever. You try to give him some grace and patience, allow him to slowly come back into the family picture, but it would take a lot of trust, you know, to get Edward back into the family picture, and we'll see if he succeeds or if he's gonna continue playing his stupid little games with Esther, especially.
My apologies once again for Miss Hayward's abrupt departure. I hope we will not think too poorly of her.
On the contrary, she's only risen in my estimation.
What was the meaning of Charlotte's behaviour, do you suppose?
I can only guess.
Tom has no idea. Like he was so blind when Sydney and Charlotte were like together in season 1. Like seriously did, but Mary knew. But it's not her place to tell Tom everything. Yeah, Tom had no idea what happened between Sydney and Charlotte. But Colonel Lennox, he wasn't, you know, bothered by Charlotte leaving the room so abruptly. He's still interested in Charlotte.
I believe I am my best self. My truest self. When I'm with you.
She going through the memory box of Sydney. She remembered what he said to her. She followed Arthur in going to church, lighting a candle, and just crying out in private. It's just an emotional scene. It just shows how vulnerable she is and how sad she is about Sydney's death. It's a tough journey that she is in right now.
All I want to hear is the door closing behind you.
Is there no part of you that's felt my absence? Can you honestly say that?
Poor, tragic, deluded Edward. I've not spared you a second's thought.
It's really annoying she said no to him at the ball. They kicked him out of Sanditon in season 1 finale. Now he's back. He's not giving up on Esther. She's already married. I mean, this is like illegal. Like, this is so wrong. But I'm glad Esther is standing her ground against him. She doesn't play around. She doesn't want to play his stupid little game again.
Will Lord Babington be joining you?
He has business to attend to.
Shame. I do hope he's treating you kindly.
He would be so stupid because of Lord Babington's absence that he had the power and control to convince Esther to kiss him or sleep with him or whatnot. Again, like, this is not right. It's so illegal in, like, you know, the custom book that doesn't exist. But in general, like, in life, like, the principle, like, you don't do that. And she's technically like half sister, so like don't even think of it, Edward. It's just so wrong what he's trying to do to her in this scene.
He brings me more joy than you could possibly imagine.
You can tell that Esther is very annoyed. By the end of this conversation, Edward is enjoying it. He thinks that he's winning again in this game that he's playing with her and Lord Babington. It's just so wrong. Completely wrong.
You look well, Esther. Radiant with health and happiness. I have no desire to cause you further pain or embarrassment. From now on, I'll keep my distance.
Let's see if he keeps his word on what he just said to her. But when he said the word health, though, I mean, I predict that it might stir something inside of Esther because of what she's going through, how she lost the baby, how her body is still recovering. So when he said, you know, you look great, Esther, like in great health, yeah, like Esther not gonna tell him what happened, of course not. It's none of his business, but when he said those words, you know, Esther like, oh boy, I need to be careful around him. Georgiana looking at older picture, which is really interesting because by this time, like you would think that maybe she would have moved on from him, but technically she is free from Sydney, so she could like go to London and marry off Otis, you know what I mean? But she is stuck in Sanditon, and I think she's just missing Otis because he was actually the only guy that is like the best for her according to her standards and what she wants in a relationship, but it didn't work out. It ended, you know, really sad for Otis and her, but I think she was just like remembering him and her relationship with him and the good times that she had with him. She's having that struggle to find a husband and someone that she likes, and I think she's going through that process of like, you know, she cannot have Otis. She wished that she could have Arthur instead. You know, with the market that she in Sanditon. Like, there's a lot of guys in Sanditon. The market is, you know, big enough, but no one catches her attention. And she wanted Arthur to take the place because she already know him, but they don't like each other romantically. And then third, Charles Lockhart, like, you know, she just met the new guy in town, this artist, and the conversation didn't go that well. So I think she's thinking a lot, and of all those guys that she dated, she met, she declined, and the possibility of that future that she can have with that special someone.
Please do not be angry with me.
I'm not.
It was badly done, but I meant no harm by it.
There are things you do not understand.
Alison wanted the best for her sister, and she did that just to support her sister and just to root for her in finding love again. That was sister do, and she didn't know that the whole conversation was bothering Charlotte until Charlotte left the room, and now she's trying to make up for it and apologize to Charlotte, and Charlotte couldn't blame her. Like, Alison doesn't know or understand fully of what Charlotte is going through mentally and emotionally.